All right, everybody. I just want to focus in on talking to you a little bit about some stuff for your research paper. Uh, Look, ideally, you have finished a rough version of the data reported or presentation of research section, the body paragraphs of the essay. And I just wanted to give you again just a little quick look at this research packet that I put online for you. Point out some stuff that this writer's doing correctly when they're writing out the body paragraphs. Uh, Also, I'm going to go over the conclusion section and the methodology section, as well as go over the answers for that quiz on plagiarism. So, uh, look, I'm not going to be doing a lot of singing and dancing, but it's all really important information if you want to get a good grade on this research paper. You want to do it right, and you want to avoid plagiarizing, which is very important. All right, so real quick, in this research packet, they kind of tell you what you're generally doing in the body of your essay, which again I'm calling the presentation of research section. Uh, you're developing each main point from your outline in a separate body paragraph. So really, this is all the points that are supporting your thesis. You support each main point with evidence, facts, and details in the form of smoothly integrated direct quotations, paraphrases, and summaries. I'm looking mostly for paraphrasing. That means you've read it on your own, you're writing it on your own, but you're just putting a citation to kind of tell me where you got the information. Not word for word. If anything is word for word, it must be in quote marks and cited. And then you arrange your main points and evidence in a logical order. And one thing they should mention here that goes back, always connects back to your thesis. Okay, so if we remember this essay from the writing packet, the thesis was looking back on the sum of his work, readers should see that Robert Frost found much of the inspiration for his poetry from the places where he lived and the natural areas nearby. So it's not really the most thrilling thesis, but it's pretty clear what we're supposed to learn is that Robert Frost got his ideas for his poetry from his surroundings and where he lived and the natural surroundings around him. So let's see if in the body they stay focused on that thesis. So let's read. This inspiration began where Frost's life began, in San Francisco. Now, look, this isn't in an interpretive essay. I'd say this is not developed and detailed enough of a topic sentence, but for this type of essay, I think it's okay. It's keeping us on topic. We're talking about the inspiration that he got, where he got his poems, and where they came from. So he's going to go into it more. The Frost family took many trips to local parks and beaches, including the Cliff House Beach, where Frost walked with his father near the pounding surf. This sparked a poem called, quote, Once by the... Oh, come here. The Pacific. Then it says Perini 14. So they quoted the title of the poem, but really what the citation here is the fact that he knows that that's where Frost got his idea for that poem because he read it in the article by Perini. It's the last name, and it was on page 14. So even though there wasn't any word for word stuff except for the name of the title of the poem, he still cited Perini. Let's keep going. As a boy with his sister Jeannie and his parents Will and Isabel, he often visited a zoo in a Victorian park called Woodward's Gardens. This park became the setting for his poem, At Woodward's Gardens, in which a boy teases two monkeys with a magnifying glass, and the monkeys snatch it from him. Untermeyer 35. Now, again, although this is in quotes, it's because it's the poem title. Otherwise, he's not quoting anything from this Untermeyer source. It's just this is where he got that story, so he's citing it. So you want to do that. Let's keep going. When Frost was only 11, his father died, leaving the family penniless. His mother returned with her children to her home state of Massachusetts, where her family could take them in. Again, Perini. Same source, which is okay. But look, we're mixing it in. We got Untermeyer, we got other stuff too. Frost spent many happy days at his aunt's farm, where he learned to love farming and formed the basis for many of the images found in his poetry. From Perini again. He finished high school as co-valedictorian of his class. I don't know why that matters. I think that's why the question mark's here, but okay. we get some more information that really I feel like you could cut this out. It doesn't really focus on the thesis that much, but it does talk about how he ends up going to a farm. So that's important. Uh, but this is better. Life changed for Frost when he was able to buy a larger, more beautiful farm in Derry, New Hampshire. The farm in Derry was a lovely place with an apple orchard and a brook running along the property. This farm and this time of Frost's life eventually provided experiences and images for much of his poetry. Frost himself once commented, quote, "There was something about the experience at Derry which stayed in my mind and was tapped for poetry in the years that came after." All right, now it says QTD in Perini. What this means is Robert Frost said this. It said Frost himself said it, but it's not, excuse me, it's not a direct quote from Frost. I mean, it is, but they're re-quoting it from Perini. It's called an indirect source. This happens pretty often where you're reading an article and they said Abraham Lincoln once said blah, blah, blah. And you know the article is dependable, so you think Lincoln must have said that. It's okay to quote Lincoln, but you tell us, where did you get that Lincoln quote? So in this case, where'd you get that Frost quote? It was quoted from the Perini article 73. But look, this was word for word from that source, so they put it in quote marks. So some of this should hopefully be showing you how these things look. Read it yourself. I just wanted to show you how he was integrating all those citations, how a lot of this is just paraphrased, but it's on topic, and that's fine. There are only a couple reasons why you would have a direct quote. One, this is really good. Frost himself once commented, it's straight from the horse's mouth. It's straight from Frost himself. So it's really good to quote him word for word. So that whenever you want to point out that somebody else said it, and that's helpful to you because it's giving like an expert's opinion or something like that, it's often good to give it in quote marks. But if it's something you can easily paraphrase in your own writing, then just do that. Okay, now I want to go into, so this was some stuff on the body paragraphs. That's what you should have finished at least some of by today. What your homework is for next time I see you is to finish really a rough draft of the whole essay. And the biggest parts of that for what you should have now are the conclusion and the methodology. Now, the conclusion is something that you should be used to. Let me show you on the prompt what I'm looking for the conclusion. So conclusion. Conclusion gives a thoughtful wrap-up to the information presented in the data reported section, or the presentation of research. Sorry, I changed my terminology and it's probably confusing. Presentation of research section. So it begins with a restatement of the thesis, and it states what should now be believed or even further researched about the focused topic. I grabbed this conclusion from a paper from last year that was quite good, and it was, he made a good argument. He was saying that they didn't need to shut down the nuclear plant at San Onofre, that's down in San Clemente, because it's not really a dangerous thing to have. That's the basis of his argument. So let's see how he did his conclusion. As we've seen, a nuclear meltdown or problem with the storage of nuclear waste around the San Onofre nuclear plant is not an issue, and climate change is a much larger threat to society. So this is restating what his whole paper was about. He was trying to prove that it's not something we need to worry about. In fact, climate change is much more of a threat. He keeps going on. There are plenty of safety features built into modern day reactors, and even if something wrong does happen, the damage is minimal. However, when these reactors are shut down, the energy they produce must be made up somehow, and the easiest way to do so is to replace it with with fossil fuels. This was a mistake. Global warming is a prevalent, dangerous threat to humanity, and nuclear energy is a cheap, efficient way to combat it. We are moving in the wrong direction, and the only thing holding us back is our own irrational fear. If we act now, learn about the safety of the nuclear power, convince those around us it is safe, and are able to start up these thousands of plants again, we have a true shot of being able to defeat climate change right now. But if we wait for another solution, it might be too late. Which apocalypse will we choose? The slow destruction of everything we once knew due to a force we could have stopped, or the imaginary monster under our bed that is another nuclear meltdown? I hope we choose the latter. I liked this. This was a strong conclusion. It went over all his main points, but also was really trying to show you what he was trying to get across with this whole thing. I bet most of you kind of understood probably what his whole essay was about just from this conclusion. So that's good, and it really has a point at the end to it. So I thought this was a good one. He has a good methodology, too. I want to show you that. Methodology. During my research process, I started out with a question and decided to research to answer that question. My question was, should the San Onofre plant have been shut down? My initial thought that it shouldn't have been was that it shouldn't have been shut down, and my research proved that. I looked through articles in the EBSCO Academic Search Premier database for the potential dangers of nuclear plants and found that they are much safer than most energy-producing plants except for the rare case of a nuclear accident, of which only 3 notable ones exist. David Ropiek's, quote, The Dangers of Radiophobia, and Lee Phillips' quote, Nuclear Option, had the greatest impact on my point of view and on this paper. They both describe what could go wrong when we shut down too many nuclear plants. But in order to understand San Onofre specifically, I had to look at Steve Chappell's The San Onofre Nuclear Plant is a Fukushima Waiting to Happen, and Mary Beth Griggs' Build Them Up or Tear Them Down. These gave great insights into what was happening specifically in San Onofre. The greatest challenge I had while researching this topic was finding a credible source describing nuclear safety codes. Some of the codes are written very specifically, but some are very vague, written so each plant can have their own interpretation of it in order to be safest. Another challenge was finding a source that was unbiased. The sources either hated nuclear plants or loved nuclear plants. It was hard to find a source that was just the facts. But I think I was able to pull out the facts from each article and create my own ideas using the truth I found. It was a pleasure being able to research this topic, and I would love to dive even deeper into what's really going on inside these nuclear facilities and whether or not they should be shut down. Let's look at the rubric. What was I asking for the methodology? Methodology gives a detailed description of the research process. I think he did that. Methodology describes what sources the student had to use to adequately research this topic, mentioning specific articles and sources. I picked his because he does this really well. He lists several of his sources and says, what they were good for. Methodology states the challenges or even lack of challenges that came with researching this particular topic. He did that well also, talking about, different biases, where he found things and what the process was like. So I thought he did a great conclusion in methodology. So hopefully that helps give you a better idea of what they are. All right, let's finish today with looking at this quiz I gave you. Boop. Boop. This plagiarism quiz. I know a few of you had some problems with loading some pictures. You'll be able to see them on this end at least. So let's look. Question 1. If you use 5 consecutive words from an author, which of the following must you do in order to avoid plagiarism? Well, the answer is use quotation marks around the words and give a citation. It doesn't show you the answer real quick. But the reason being, I guess I can just tell you, here I am. But so if it's word for word, consecutive words, you need to put them in quote marks and cite them. Now, don't get too comfortable, though. Sometimes people go, well, I'll put 4 of his words, then I'll replace the next word, and then I'll put another 4 of his words. That can still end up being plagiarism, all right? If you change something once in a while and you don't quote it, then you're still plagiarizing. Question 2. What is the best way to take notes to avoid plagiarism? It is only note down keywords, dates, and other basic information. Don't write down a bunch of full sentences, but you do want to know what the facts are. But if you copy and paste a bunch of stuff, that might end up being copied and pasted into your paper itself and, end up being plagiarism. Why not just paraphrase an author's facts in your notes and look at the source as you look at the source material? Well, you don't know how you're going to use it yet. You want to note down when you get the keywords, dates, and like basic information or things you need. Then you can decide where you want to plug that in. If you paraphrase from the beginning, you might not know where you're going to use it and how you want to paraphrase it. All right. Question 3. If you paraphrase information from a source entirely in your own words, what must you do in order to avoid plagiarism? Well, if it's entirely in your own words, you do not need to put it in quote marks. However, since you got the information from somewhere else, you still need to cite it. So you must provide a citation in text and in your works cited. True or false? MLA suggests footnotes as a mean of citation. False. There's nothing wrong with footnotes, but it's not MLA, and this paper is an MLA. What should your in-text citation look like for a website where there are no page numbers, but there is an author? Well, you put the author's last name, and that's all you have to put. You don't need to put this website URL. What should your in-text citation look like for a website where there are no page numbers and no author? You should put the title of the web page article. There are some things that people have shown me that are exceptions, like if it's a governmental organization, sometimes they ask you to quote that even though you don't know who wrote it. So I'll never be upset if you put the title of the webpage article or the title of the newspaper article or whatever. As long as if you didn't have a specific author, then put the author. True or false? If you have a direct quotation, you must provide an in-text citation immediately after the quotation. That is true. You should. True or false? If your paper has major plagiarism issues, you will get a 0 on your paper. Oops, I didn't do it. True or false? True. You'll get a 0. That's no good. Don't do it. All right. Number 9, true or false? Even in distance learning, there's still a referral process in place that encourages teachers to report plagiarism cases to the vice principal. That's true. We're still dealing with plagiarism cases, so don't be one of them. Just because it's almost over and we're in, quarantine doesn't mean plagiarism's suddenly okay. True or false? As long as you're passing the class for your quarter grade, you will still definitely be able to pass, even if you were caught plagiarizing. This is false. You can still fail the class even if you are passing at the quarter if you are failing due to plagiarism. If you just don't do the work, then yeah, you might still pass. But if you plagiarize, then you all of a sudden can go into failing if you cause your grade to fail due to the plagiarism. All right, let's say that a research source, Hughes, writes the following sentence. Sex trafficking has existed since the beginning of civilization. The first movement against sex trafficking started in England with the goal of revoking the Contagious Diseases Act. Now let's say a student tried to paraphrase that and wrote, sex trafficking has been around since the start of civilization. Look how they changed it. Sex traffic not has existed, but has been around. They changed that phrase. Since the, not beginning, but the start of civilization. So they changed a couple words around. The first movement against sex trafficking began in England with the goal of eliminating the Contagious Diseases Act. The first movement against sex trafficking, instead of started, is began down here. In England with the goal of revoking, here they have eliminating the Contagious Diseases Act. Okay, this one's really important to me. They did cite it. But a lot of this is word for word. Sex trafficking has, since of civilization, the first movement against sex trafficking in England with the goal of the Contagious Diseases Act. I read all the parts that they still used word for word. So, did this student plagiarize? Yes, they did. That's not paraphrasing. That's changing words here and there. What would they have needed to do? They would have needed to quote that word for word part, which would have been a weird way to do it, but that's what they would have needed to do. All right. Question 12. Look at the following example from here's an example too. Look at the following example from a paper from a student example uploaded to turnitin.com. The highlighted words are from an online source. Advocates of women's rights claim there is a particular reason that sexual harassment flourished in politics, stating that at its core, sexual harassment is about power and politics is the ultimate power profession. All these things in purple here are word for word. I get so annoyed when people just change stuff once. It's so trying to be so tricky. Don't be tricky. Just be honest. What do you think will likely happen if one or two sentences, if there's one or two sentences that look like this in your research paper? The answer is this is technically plagiarism, but Mr. Piorek will have to consider if it's an ethical violation. I see the attempt to give credit, but it's the same thing that happened here. If there's just one sentence like that, I might say it's a bad paraphrase. I might say, it's more of an issue with citing it properly, but and take points off. But this can get you in trouble for plagiarism too. So this is one of those gray areas. So be careful. Don't do it. You don't want to be in the gray area. All right, this one. Look at the following example from a paper, from a student example. The highlighted words are from an outside source. Boom! Woof! Look at all that. There they are, being sneaky. They go, if I turn citizens into people, or is a major, I turn that into leading, then I'll trick them all. You're not going to trick me. You won't trick turnitin.com. It's a computer. It's smarter than all of us. It'll take over soon. What will happen if I see this? By the way, notice there is no citation whatsoever here. But even if there was, even if it said at the bottom, like, James or something like that, and I saw all this, you will receive a 0 on the paper and a referral to a vice principal. We won't even, I'll talk to you about it, but we won't negotiate or anything. You'll just get the 0. So don't do it. All right. Compare this quote from a piece by James Lester. I think we're almost done. We're almost done, guys. It's all right. So here's the original quote. And then a student will paraphrase it. Let's see if they did it right. Students frequently overuse direct quotation in taking notes, and as a result, they overuse quotations in the final research paper. Probably only about 10% of your final manuscript should appear as directly quoted matter. Therefore, you should strive to limit the amount of exact transcribing of source materials while taking notes. Lester didn't have to cite himself, but we cited him anyway. In research paper, this is the student paraphrase. In research papers, students often quote excessively, failing to keep quoted material down to a desirable level. Since the problem usually originates during note-taking, it's essential to minimize the material recorded verbatim. If you compare these two, the wording is totally different. Okay? None of it is doing the funky stuff where people try to change words here and there around. It's completely different. But since it did come from this Lester source, you still have to cite it, but it does not need to be quoted. So did they legitimately do it? Yes, they did. They did a good job. Good job, person. Last one. Same quote, but now this one. Let me read to you just the words that are exactly the same as the original. Students use quotations. Take notes. Result. In the final research paper. Probably only about 10% of final, instead of manuscript is copy, should directly quoted. Let's see, what is it? Limit the amount of source material while taking notes. All I'm trying to say is I said a lot of the words exactly in the same order as they were up here. I skipped a lot of words because they did the little sneaky Pete stuff where they tried to skip things here and there. All right? So did they legitimately plagiarize? Did they legitimately paraphrase? Is this good? No, it's not. They did two things wrong. They did too much of the same word for word material. They should have just written it completely on their own, and they didn't even cite it at all. So it's no bueno. All right, let's submit it. See how we did. Is it going to show me? Ooh, I got it right, guys. Oh, I got that one. Oh, what? Yes, yes. Let's see. Let's see. I got 100%. Oh, here. By the way, uh, in the note when you took the quiz, it would have showed you I highlighted all the parts in that last question that were the same from here to here, and we see that it would have come up all funky plagiarized too. So guys, be careful. Don't plagiarize. Email me if you have any questions. You're almost out of here. You're almost done with high school. Don't end it with some kind of weird plagiarism deal. That would be no good for anybody in your last 2 weeks of high school. All right. Well, let me know if you have questions. Take care.